Welcome. This is our first Marketing with a Book and Speech podcast. It's meant to be a weekly roundtable so our Indie Books family can come together, ask questions of Mark LeBlanc or myself or our expert guests and members of the family. So we're so glad to have you here. And for those who don't know me, because these are going on YouTube, so anything you say today will be recorded and it goes on to YouTube. So I'm Henry DeVries. I run Indie Books International. I'm the CEO, the Chief Encouragement Officer. We work with independent consultants who want to attract high-paying clients by marketing with a book and a speech. During the last decade, I have ghostwritten, edited, published more than 300 business books, including 12 with my own name on them. And that includes my international bestseller from McGraw-Hill with Tom Searcy, How to Close a Deal Like Warren Buffett. Now in Chinese, we cover the globe. We're in 5 different languages. So I hear we lose something in the original, but we're out there in Chinese. We've got that. So as a result of working with me, authors report they have more impact and influence. And that's what this podcast is about, more impact and influence. So we're going to be talking about that. It's a chance to raise a question. It's a chance for you to have a showcase opportunity from time to time where you'll present to the other authors on the call. And that's what the designation is for. Now, in my bio, on a personal note, I am a baseball nut. I have visited 44 Major League Baseball parks, and I have 2 to go before I touch them all. Now, before a baseball game begins, there are ground rules. So I'm going to explain the ground rules for the calls. We're going to hear a little from the chairman of Indie Books International. Then we have our guest speaker, Tom Searcy, my co-author. Really, I'm his co-author. He's the lead author on How to Close a Deal Like Warren Buffett. It was his idea. And he had the bestseller Whale Hunting. So he's familiar with doing this, and he's a thought leader. He's still coming out with books. Thought leaders are never one and done or two and done. They keep producing. So we'll hear about that. And then we'll have a roundtable discussion. I want these calls to be an opportunity where if you need some time or access to me, on Tuesdays at 3 o'clock Pacific, 5 o'clock Central, there's an opportunity to come here and speak. Some weeks, of course, I'll be on vacation or what have you, traveling. Traveling, what's that? But assuming that we get vaccinated and there's travel again, I might have to miss one. But then we'll have somebody like Mark or Devin or somebody host this. So our plan is we're doing these for 52 straight weeks. I want to introduce our producer, Suzanne Hagen. If you have an idea for a broadcast, please shoot it to Suzanne. Suzanne might be the person who contacts you and invites you to speak. We have speakers lined up for the first few months, but we're looking for second quarter to line people up. So with that, I'd like to turn the talking stick over to the chairman, my brother of another mother, my confidant. Please welcome Mark LeBlanc, chairman of Indie Books International. Mark, are you unmuted?
Now I am.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us for the charter or inaugural episode of this video podcast. Every once in a while, I share an idea with Henry, and before we're done with the conversation, it's outlined and planned and on the calendar. So it wasn't that long ago that I planted the seed for this with Henry, and I said, just put this in the parking lot and we can look at it sometime in 2021, and here we are on January 5th, and we're here. As the chairman of the board of Indie Books International, it's my real pleasure to be connected to Indie Books and to be business partners with Henry DeVries. I run a speaking business out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And as a speaker, I conduct presentations for independent and practice professionals on how to create an extreme sliver of focus and put more money in their pocket as a business owner. As a business coach and advisor, I've clocked over 20,000 one-on-one coaching hours, helping people start or grow their business. In fact, I wrote the book titled Growing Your Business. It's my first of 5 books to date. And as Henry shared, a thought leader or somebody with deep expertise never stops at one book. As a result of my work, people often share they are more focused on a daily basis, able to attract more prospects, stimulate more referrals, and ultimately create a path and a plan for generating more business. Since Henry shared a personal note, I will too. Next year, I will go on a short 500-mile walk across Spain for the 4th time. It's what I do in my spare time when I am not speaking, coaching, or authoring or co-authoring my next book. I happen to be the poster child for what can happen when you write the right book. So many people talk about you need to write a book, or you're a pretty sharp guy, or you're a pretty sharp gal. You need to write a book. And of course, in the mid to late 90s, I began to hear this, and my confidence was not very high as a writer. I was fairly confident as a business coach. I was confident as a presenter, but writing was not necessarily my forte, although I had written a number of articles. And but in 2000, I published my first book, Growing Your Business, a rather unique format, a rather unique style, less than 100 pages. It was designed as a mass market paperback book. And little did I know then what I know today in terms of writing the right book. But that little book became what Henry refers to as an underground bestseller. And to date, I've moved over 80,000 copies of that little book. But the stat that I am most proud of is that I have to date over 800 quantity orders of 50 copies or more. So approximately 50% of my sales were due to volume orders. In fact, even 20 years after it was first published, I still have professionals buy an order of 50 copies or more to give to their prospects and their clients. And Henry and I talk about something that we refer to as the trifecta. And the trifecta is book title, presentation title, and domain name the same. I'm a business coach and advisor helping people grow their business. I've done over 1,000 presentations titled Growing Your Business, and my domain name is growingyourbusiness.com, and my email address is mark@growingyourbusiness.com. There's some cachet when your book title and your presentation title are the same. Example, when an association is thinking about hiring a speaker and somebody says, hey, we need to have somebody this year help our members or bring a message of how they can grow their business. Oh, I know. Let's get the guy who wrote the book, Growing Your Business. It doesn't guarantee me the presentation or the opportunity, but in a tie, I often win. And what Henry and I have done, or what I think sets us apart from our competition or other publishing houses or services is, and this sounds somewhat contrarian, we care less about the book and more about what your book will lead to. It's challenging today to get an ROI on a $10 or a $20 or $30 book. You almost you do best effort in publicity and social media, and certainly not to discount building a platform and working to move books. But your book should really be designed from the perspective of leading to or being a gateway book for more $2,000 bills or $5,000 bills or $20,000 bills. And so with that in mind, we encourage people not just to think about who's going to edit my book or my manuscript, but who's going to be the developmental editor of the book. Somebody who helps shape the book, outline the book, design the right table of contents, help you select the $1 million title or subtitle, but designing the book and writing the book with it being a gateway book. And so I'm gonna leave it right there, Henry. I'm gonna pass the talking stick back to you, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Mark didn't mention, but he's helped train over 1,000 professional speakers. So he's a great asset that you can tap into on these calls. He tends to be booked solid. So trying to get on his calendar is tough because that was the plan. So, but this is something he volunteered to do, to be on a lot of these calls. So if during the discussion period, you want to ask him a question. And we think that if you have the question, our other authors have the same question or could benefit from it. So Mark, thank you so much for making yourself available this year. Well, now I would like to turn the talking stick over to my good buddy, Tom Searcy. Tom was generous to give of his time today, best-selling author, founder, creator of the firm Hunt Big Sales, and he'll be telling some of that story. Tom, let's turn the talking stick over to you.
Thanks, Henry. Good to see everybody, and grateful for the time to just get this idea out there, which is what happens, what do I do once I've written a book, right? So I've written my book, and now what goes on? And I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe that the writers that are on this call and the published authors on this call have a net economic desire to go out into the world and write their book. Now, they have a fundamental desire, which is to see the world get better through some significant change. Even if you're writing a novel, there is a change that occurs in the person who read your novel. Possibly they're distracted, possibly they're informed, possibly they're entertained. But that is one kind of writing, and that's a fiction writing. And there's still a change that you want to see inside of your author or inside of your readers. In the business books that I write, I'm looking for them to change the way that they do their business, or more importantly, how do they think about their business? The economic component of that does not come from the book royalties. So when I wrote Whale Hunting, How to Land Big Sales and Transform Your Business, that particular book, we got given a royalty back when large publishing houses gave people that were writing their first book a royalty, an advance, and then paid royalties against it. It was Wiley and Sons was the first folks that published us. And they gave us a small retainer, whatever you want to call it, in advance. And after that, we then spent our own money. And so we spent $100,000 on that book. $100,000, small business, spent $100,000 on that book. And over the course of the last 12 years, it's generated $15 million. So I guess I'd say that I have a $15 million book. And that book did not sell 15 million copies, as much as I still have hopes outstanding that it will. That's not what happened. What happened is what happens after the book. There needs to be in your own mind, as you're writing the book, a particular ongoing expectation or future picture. Mark says to himself, hey, I wrote a 100-page book, but in the end, the book, although it's been well received and many people have bought it, the fact is, what did it lead to? What was the economic value of that over time? Well, it comes through a variety of different pieces. I always talk about kind of the idea of kind of a 5-step piece. And then from that, I'll talk about what the economic model is. And that is that first, the book attracts people to you, right? As we talked about that idea of the right title. Seth Godin talks about the idea of a book, and he talks about the idea that the front of the book, the responsibility is to get to people to look at the back of the book. The back of the book's job is to get people to look on the inside of the cover of the book. The inside of the cover of the book is to get you to look at the table of contents. Now, Seth Godin does seem to own a lot of end caps in bookstores. And so possibly that allows people to go by and pick up his book and follow what we're talking about there. And yet the online bookstores allow people to do the same thing. And to Mark's point, the title of the book is what leads people through that first area, that first step, which is the area of attraction. Once people are attracted to the book and to you, because these things are, I would say synonymous, but in the world of business books or professional books, those kinds of things, they become synonymous. Mark has titled his speeches and his book and his website, etc., to the point that they are almost indiscernible between each other. Mark is this is Mark. That's not inaccurate. So the first thing is the step to get to the attraction. And the second thing you get is that idea of credentialization. So the book provides an opportunity for you to attract people and then credentialize yourself and your idea sets. Mark has a 100-page book, and he lays out very clearly an idea of what to do going forward to grow your business. And inside of that table of contents and etc., it lays out what his credentials are for doing that. He may or may not revise that credentials page on the back. He probably could every year, just the annual review of Mark's book, and he rewrites what's happened over the course of the last week. But if he has, or last year, but if he hasn't, I was hoping to get Mark to smile for that, but I can tell that's going to be a tough audience. So I'll look to other people. So he credentializes himself. Third piece of that is relevance. What about this particular book is relevant to me? So I've gone through that addition of that idea of attracting. Now I'm going to come back to that in a moment. And then the idea of credentializing, which is what a book does for you. If it only sits by itself on a shelf, then it doesn't credentialize you very much. There's going to have to be some additional efforts to make that happen. And that's how you get to the millions and millions of dollars that $100,000 investment gets you in a book. Because the book itself is not the revenue generator. The royalty itself, at least not for me, was the generator. It's what it generated, first by attraction, secondly by credentials, the third thing by relevance. And again, I'm going to go back to what Mark's opening statements were. He is very clearly telling you what I am relevant about, what it is that you are attracted to, and I've credentialized to teach you or show you. You are now relevant to an audience, and from that relevance comes into an issue of precision. I go back again to what Mark said. Mark's done a nice job in the intro to this, because in his 1,000 presentations, he stuck pretty closely to what the presentation language was around his book. And the issue is, I am not only relevant to you, I am precision relevant. If you are this particular kind of audience, that I am, if you are an entrepreneur or a business person who wants to grow their business, I am built for you. All right. If your issue is that you would like to better invest your portfolio of wealth, Mark's not the guy saying I'm that guy. He's very, very precise. And so through attraction, create the idea of credentialization, relevance, and precision, you get to this issue of engagement. All right. I'm going to go back to the idea of now I've got a book. All right. The book is supposed to generate, as a part of all of that, all the things that I just said, but it can't stand alone. The book itself is a part of that overall piece. So I'm going to take my own book or books, and I'll start off with the idea that that book allowed me to do wonderful things. It allowed me to become relevant, credentialized and relevant and precise to all sorts of groups out in the marketplace that wanted to hear from the voice of an expert on how to land big sales. So I got a chance to write for Fortune magazine. I got a chance to write for Inc. magazine, full and regularly published blogs, my own blog post, build that particular database. I got paid by ink and fortune, a certain amount of money to do that particular work. But more importantly, people now saw themselves as attracted to, credentialized by, relevant for, right, and precision aimed at engagement. And because of that, they then identified me as an expert. And as an expert, they expected a different way, a higher level of a way, a more intimate level of connection to get access to all that information. So from that generated the speaking opportunities and the consulting opportunities. And so now I've got this book, and now I've got this developed sets of relationships, and now I've got developed training programs, and all of that winds up making up the $15 million that I lost on the $100,000 I invested in the book. I had the economic model up front that what I expected the book to do, although I thought I was going to sell more copies actually, but I'm not like Mark. I sold 30,000 copies. I don't know if Mark's made $15 million or not. He won't tell me. But the gist of it comes down to this. Without those first 5 steps that we're talking about, the economic model on the back end does not work. But it does work once you have the book. The book does something kind of magical in those 5 areas. There's a term that I like to use when we're teaching our programs, and I think it fits in back with what Mark and Henry would tell you, and that is cut thin and slice deep. The idea of cutting thin means I get to the precision of the marketplace that you want to reach. What is the avatar of that particular marketplace? Mark has cut his avatar out and his group out there, those people who want to grow their businesses. And inside of that, I would tell you that as I start to read that book, I don't think it's the same thing for someone who wants to grow their garage business as a cupcake person as want to grow their online app business. I think if you wouldn't have to read very many pages before you would start to get a general feeling of the level of precision about that particular area. So I would encourage anybody who's on here, cut thin. Who are you trying to reach and solve their problems and work with their issues in which you have, as I've said before, credentialization, relevance, and precision. When you cut deep, or when you slice deep, that means that you are driving as deeply as you can into your level of expertise inside of that relevance, because as you do and you demonstrate that well of expertise, people are going to seek, and I call it intimacy, not obviously in a physical way, but proximity to that level of that deep well of your expertise. This gives you a chance, because of the book and all the things that it did, to be invited into or invite others into that proximity. How do you monetize that? You'll never write another book again. Okay, fine. You don't write another book again. Both Mark and Henry would like me to not say that, but let's just say that you don't. All right. What do I do with the book I've got? You chop it up. You give it away as a free chapter here or there. You use it as a promo piece. You use it as the backbone of a marketing campaign that you've got out there to drive people to read your book, connect with you, join your newsletter, move forward. But if you've got a book that says, I'm going to write this book and I'm going to go out there and it's going to credentialize me, all right, that will only go so far. You'll win on the attraction side. You may win on the credentialization, but if you haven't cut thin and sliced deep, all right, you're going to wind up being part of the scattergun of information out in the marketplace of people that consider themselves to be experts and in part relevant to you. So I go back to this idea of you've got a book, and Mark and Henry have already talked about this before. Never have one book being written at any one given time. Otherwise, you run the risk of trying to put every idea that you've ever had inside of that one book. It's unfair to the future people who need your expertise because they can't consume all that you have to bring to them in one single book or one single meal. It also denies the fact that you're evolving in your expertise and capability. So you're always writing several books in a row, but after that, that book provides that economic platform. I've described mine. So I wound up doing, that book gave me the opportunity to attract a particular very large speakers bureau. And that speakers bureau then was, because of my credentials and my relevance, And my ability to show the precision of all that through that book was able to then book me. And I was able through that group to get 420 paid for speeches out of that around the country. And that sold more books, but more importantly, it sold more consulting, training, other kinds of product along the way, which was really the intention of the book anyway. From the very beginning, I made money on the speaking gigs. There's no doubt about that. But the vast majority of that money that we're talking about, probably over the course of 15 years, maybe there's, I don't know, $1.5 million in speaking and 13.5 million in consulting and training and products and webinars and seminars and all the other kinds of things that happen after the book. So if you think about what I've said right now, $100,000 is a pretty small investment to make to get $15 million in overall business. What's your after the book strategy? How will you economically deliver on that overall promise? What is, I say, start off with the idea of cut thin and slice deep. And then after that, I ask the question of, do you have a piece that goes forward and rolls that book? If you only wrote one book, and Mark's written 5, but he talks about the first book that he wrote, people are still buying it. This revenue is evergreen for him. His ability to get the second book sold and the third and the fourth and the fifth, and an audience that follows him and super fans that are really engaged with him, and 1,000 speeches and all of those kinds of things happen because he had something planned beyond the book. So I'm going to turn the talking stick back over to you, Henry, and see how we might take the balance of the time and be helpful to each other.
Thank you, Tom. Everybody, this is how you applaud on Zoom. You do jazz hands. So yeah, jazz hands for Tom. So I'm going to open it up to the authors that use the chat feature just for starters. If you have a question for either Tom or Mark or myself. So the idea of this call, I'll do a little preamble and then we'll take the questions. The idea for the call is, I don't know of any other publishing company that gets its authors together on a regular basis. And this is your superpower as an author, the relationships you can build from amongst the family. And I suggest you take notes on who's here. I suggest you go and link in with them if you haven't. If you want a directory of authors, Devin would be happy to give you one from the last family and forum event. We've got another forum event coming up. You'll be contacted for that. We're being virtual on this. To look for opportunities to speak for 5 minutes on this call about something that'd be of value to other people, because you can't recommend a speaker unless you've heard them speak. Now, you've heard Tom today and you've heard Mark. We also want to have a lot of opportunities for you to hear each other. And this is how we're going to amplify each other's work. So something that's in the works is Suzanne, news for Suzanne. One of the next things she's doing is creating the LinkedIn group for indie family authors. So we can go on LinkedIn. We'll also have one on Facebook that you can tell us what you're doing, where you're speaking, what you're writing about, and let us share that with our networks. For years, I searched for the secret code, the combination, the magic bullet. David Goldman, you're a Lone Ranger fan. It's like the silver bullet. So we're looking for the magic bullet on having impact and influence, getting invited to be a speaker. And I couldn't figure it out, but I kept getting these speeches because of my relationships. And I thought, oh, well, that's like cheating. it's, these relationships, but, I got to find the secret code on how we get strangers to book us as a speaker. And then it dawned on me, I found the secret. It's relationships. It's not about strangers on the internet falling in love with you. That's not how it is. So with that, we're going to start taking questions. So Teresa would like Tom, then Mark and Henry to say, have you shifted ways to find new clients through leveraging your book? So I guess some of it's the shift. If Teresa, if I understand it, Teresa, why don't you unmute yourself and fully ask the question?
Thank you, Henry. Yeah, I think we had our traditional ways we were doing things pre-pandemic, and I'm just wondering if you see the next 6 months or in the past 3 months how you've really shifted leveraging your book as that lead to finding clients.
Okay, Tom, do you want to take it first before I give you the talking stick? Teresa, you're looking really good. Your video presence is really good. I know you're starting podcasting and doing that.
Yes.
So just want to say we noticed.
Thank you.
Mark, when Mark said, he tells me and I say, okay, our first one's January 5th. We had to spend $1,000 on equipment, each of us, and training and all this to get it up to this level. So that's the first thing about the shift is amateur hour is over. We're going to live our life this year on Zoom, and this little square is who you are. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom and then Mark.
Okay. First of all, I spent obviously $25 on my lighting. So because I look like I'm a vampire, most of my Zoom calls are during the day, and so I'm actually better lit. But right now, we could land a plane based on the brightness here. So I apologize for that. I'll try and spend another $975 and get this up to speed. Yeah, a lot of ways have changed as far as the book goes. So, gosh, there's so many ways. And we put out another book up till now. Webinars are a great opportunity to reverse engineer what Mark has talked about, which is taking the idea and putting a webinar together of the pieces of the book. It's very interesting. An hour-long webinar that hits 6 out of the 10 chapters of your table of contents. And if there's 5 layers deep into that, you hit each of those table of contents pieces, 1 or 2 of those 5 points deep, will generate a variety of things. First of all, it'll generate, if you have a workbook that goes with your book, it'll generate book sales and workbook sales out of doing that. It'll generate a lot of requests for your slides or materials or whatever. And what are you going to trade for that? You're going to trade their information to add to your newsletter. And that's another way or another part of it. One of the things that we did that I'm not certain, I stole it from Harvey McKay. He's this writer. He's written a couple of books. And Harvey just sends a 6-pack box of his hard copy books out to clients or prospects that he'd like to see out there. Well, for us, we had a digital book, so we sent that out. We talked to companies and they said, well, we'd like to know a little bit more about you and we'd like to know a little bit more about this topic. We said, send us all the emails and the contact information for them, and we'll send out to all of your employees a copy of this book. There's also a program that goes along with it. And so let's get the book out, but the fact is the program follows on. Now that wound up being much more successful than we thought. It wound up being 3 webinars and 2 newsletters. And then from that, those 2 wound up generating, I think we wound up getting about 1,000 people's information out of that. And we wound up generating 6 figures in income from people who'd received a free book that we'd just done digitally. It was not even enough to get Henry's attention. I mean, it was so small. I'm not trying to, I'm just saying he's busy. And so, you think I was an old friend. You think, there was some way to go ahead and get on his docket. Now that Suzanne's there, maybe things are kind of whipped into shape. But point being is that what has changed? What can I give away in order to get data and information and et cetera, so I can put people into digital programs inside of what folks would call a click funnel. So that is one of the ways that has changed that. And instead of doing the Harvey McKay hard copy ship to a company in which the people don't work there anymore, grab all the database information, et cetera, put that in my newsletter, send that out. And now everybody has that. And I go back to the person I gave all of the copies to and say, I think you need the program. What do you think? He said, I think they're not reading it. I think they need the program. I said, well, if you think so, let's do that. Does that answer that question, Henry, in some way?
It's a great start. Why don't we bring Mark on, and because I saw Mark nodding for several things you said. I'd like to hear Mark's take on it.
Thank you, Henry, and thank you, Teresa. I think for me in the last 12 months, the big shift is that I completely embraced virtual work. And as I look to the future, I don't see myself on 40 trips a year anymore. I think I will cherry pick 5 trips a year for perfect fit opportunities. In fact, I think that's has been part of my 20-year journey, 20 plus year journey, is I have a very detailed blueprint or internal schematic of my good fit, right fit, and perfect fit speaking opportunities. But when I think about shift, I think the biggest thing for me in the last 12 months or during COVID is staging my own events versus um, looking for paid speaking opportunities. And I find myself much more relaxed, much more, I think, even effective or influential. And I don't bill myself as a contrarian, but I certainly don't follow the crowd. Where some people tend to build a large platform of subscribers and prospects and clients, I believe that our current database is about 400. And my philosophy has been, I'd rather have a smaller database that I serve more intensely than a larger database or collection of people that I serve more sporadically. And what I have found over the course of time, that extreme sliver of focus has led to more advocacy. And so I'm thrilled. I think the future looks great. And for those of you, and I certainly know, we sound like we're so smart and that everything works so well. And I know that Tom, I know that Henry, and certainly myself, we all have stories of the good, the bad, the ugly, and the great. Um, but I think the future looks great for those of you that are in gear and in the game, what we call the game of business worth playing. November was the biggest sales month of 2020 for me, and December turned out to be the biggest sales month of my 38-year career in business. So, and I share that with you, and certainly I'm proud of those results, but I share those 2 results with you more for the fact that we did not do anything extraordinary. We did not spend a lot of money to produce those results. We have an incredible ground game and network of connections, of advocacy. We just stayed in second gear consistently. We've never shifted into high gear, nor have we ever shifted into neutral. In fact, December 31st was an incredible sales day for us, while everyone else knocked off early. So Henry and I believe this is the game of business worth playing, and we're thrilled that you're here. And thank you, Teresa.
Thanks, Mark. Art asked a question, and I'd like to deal with Art's question. So Art's question is about, okay, he's just finishing his manuscript. He's about to go into publishing, but, oh, what do I do to market all this? And how do I get this return and all that? So Art, I'll give you a short answer for everybody. 3 times a year, I do a author retreat. So it's 2 days, it's online, and it's interactive. So I only take about 10 authors on for this. So the next one's coming up January 14 and 15. So if you're someone who's not a client, I charge $1,000 and people pay that to attend. If you are a current Indie Books client in publishing, we waive the fee. If you're a past client, a recovering client, we'd like to call it Sector 3 when we talk about business development, it's $200 to attend. So I'm trying to make money, not the object here. It's what I love to do. And we build the whole planning for what happens as a result of the book. I say crossing the starting line is publishing the book, and there is no finish line. Tom looked at all those years. The ROI, we never talk about this because nobody would believe us, but the cumulative ROI, if you keep doing this year after year, it's amazing what can happen from one book. I like to just say, we've studied it and it's 400 to 2,000%. I have people who will, who've provided us measurable results, testimonials. They will talk about their money and what they've had as a result of doing the book and doing the program like Tom and Mark have described. So the nuts and bolts on that, Art, I would say, is get into one of those. The next one I do is in June and then September. The forum that we do once a year is a different animal. That is a collection of our greater family, people who are Hall of Fame speakers. Tom Searcy spoke last year. He was honored in the legend category. Good to see that you're still going, legend, Tom. Yeah, one of our legends says, does this mean like you expect me to die? And I go, no, it's just we want to honor you for your career. You're doing great. So the forum gets the legends and we're going virtual. So Teresa, back to you. We pivoted this year. I'm doing my retreats that I used to have people fly into La Jolla for. Those are going to be online. I'm never going back. The forum, I've signed the contract that we'll be back, vaccinations willing, a year from now, because that's nice when we can all get together and have that special event. The training, though, is that we're adding more training, Art. This is part of the training. And I'll also give you monographs and books. Monograph is a fancy word for a term paper. I got it from Arthur Conan Doyle. I'm a big reader of the Sherlock Holmes series. I've read every Sherlock Holmes book and short story ever written, and more than once. And in them, Sherlock Holmes is commenting, somebody asks him a question about tobacco. And he goes, oh, I wrote a monograph on the 273 different types of tobacco in the United Kingdom. And I thought, dang, one day I'm going to write monographs. And when people ask for it, I'm going to say, let me give you my monograph on that. Just sounds real impressive. You might call it a white paper. But I have lots of monographs to help you with these things. And also, as one of our authors, you can have a call with me every month if you want it. The only problem was my schedule. Thanks to Mark's help, I'm getting totally booked. It's a great thing, but it's also scary. So that's why we're creating opportunities like this. We might also do some pop-up trainings. Mark is planning some pop-up trainings. He didn't ask me, but I'm going to throw it in. Mark does a business development training called the Achievers Circle. And these are several times a year, and he takes a limited number of people. This is the best business development training you can do. if you don't do at least one a year, I don't want to tell you how to live your life, but if you don't do at least one a year, you're making a horrible mistake. So some of these things we were saying is, oh, purple's more important than going green. And then I would have chimed in and said, I'm all about orange. My whole thing is on orange. Mark created a tool called the numbers tracking tool. I think he should get the Nobel Prize in marketing for the creation of this tool. I wish when I was president of the big ad agency, I had this tool. So you want the tool, Mark will generously give it to you. You want the manual explaining it, I'll give you that book. It's Build Your Consulting Practice. The tools are out there, and we're also there for you to help do it. And then you'll become part of the secret club, and you'll have this secret language. Because Mark teaches, we set our counters to 0 every month. And why have one New Year's Day renewal when we can have 12 every month? So we wish each other on Facebook and other places a happy new year on the last day of every month. And then there'll be these things that, oh, well, I went purple, orange, yellow. I went Skittles. That's when you go orange and gold and purple and, green, the whole thing. When you go, that's going Skittles. Some months I've gone brown. Brown is not on Mark's list, but I've gone brown where I didn't hit any of the numbers. And you start over again. You set your counter to 0 the next month and you keep going. So I'm going to wrap it up for today. This has been the call. You've seen the introduction. If you want to be one of the speakers for 5 minutes on one of these calls, shoot me an email. If you have questions that you want to be sure we cover topics, shoot me an email. If you have an idea for a speaker, shoot me an email. If you have an idea for a technical person who can help with my camera, shoot me an email. We've gone off again. That was a subtle clue to get the tech department over here. Thank you. Oh, that's funny. No, it's like it shows the picture, but I'm not there. I'm like a ghost. I'm a vampire. You can't see me. Oh, that's funny. Okay, well, we're just going to go to no video for me as we close this out. I said we demonstrate everything we teach. I didn't say we do it well. I didn't say we're perfect, but we're trying. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to do a sign off here, and we look forward to seeing you again at our Marketing with a Book and Speech podcast. Thanks everybody for being here. Bye everybody.